Hi, my name is Rachel Thomas,
And I'm Caroline Loveless.
and our chapter for session 3 was chapter 4 by Abraham Tannenbaum, which was called The Nature and Nurture of Giftedness.
The author of this chapter, Abraham Tannenbaum, developed his own definition of giftedness that says, keeping in mind that developed talent exists primarily in adults, I propose a definition of giftedness in children to denote their potential for becoming critically acclaimed performers or exemplary producers of ideas in spheres of activity that enhance the moral, physical, emotional, social, intellectual, or aesthetic life of humanity.
In creating his definition, he asked himself 3 basic questions about giftedness. The 3 questions are: who qualifies to join the pool of possibly gifted individuals? What broad realms of achievement among pool members are judged for signs of excellence? And how do pool members demonstrate their giftedness in these domains of human accomplishment?
Tannenbaum identifies 8 groups of individuals to define the who, what, and how of giftedness. We are going to briefly describe who society says each of these groups of people are. As we describe each of them, think about where you would fall within Tannenbaum's definition of giftedness. The first one is the producer of thoughts creatively, which can be viewed as the philosopher, and can also include poets, novelists, or choreographers. The second is the producer of thoughts proficiently, which can be viewed as the expert and can include talented editors, troubleshooters, and masters of computer programs. The third group of individuals is the producer of tangibles creatively, which can be viewed as the inventor and can include sculptors, architects, or engineers. The fourth group is the producer of tangibles proficiently, which is the precision worker, and includes diamond polishers, wood craft persons, or tool makers. The fifth group is the performer of stage artistry creatively, which is the interpreter, and also can include musical recitalists, dramatic actors, or orchestral conductors. The sixth group is the performer of stage artistry proficiently, which is the dancer, and can also include orchestral musicians, movie actors, or chorus members. The seventh group is the performer of human services creatively, which is the helper, and can also include social workers, political leaders, or action researchers. The final group of individuals is the performer of human services proficiently, which is the teacher, and can also include physicians, psychiatrists, or administrators.
Through the 8 broad categories developed by Tannenbaum, he was then left with the question: what intrapsychic attributes and external circumstances enable a child over time to qualify as gifted? Intrapsychic attributes are those involved in mental power, such as eventual adult achievement and the things that we learn during our childhood years. On the other hand, external circumstances are the things that people tend to focus more on, such as good looks, charm, or advancing themselves in their career opportunities.
After defining giftedness, Tannenbaum then took it a step further to determine the factors that contribute to the giftedness that we demonstrate. Each factor interacts with one another, yet the lack of one cannot be made up for with the others. This can be seen in his STAR model, and the 5 factors are: 1. General ability, 2. Special aptitude, 3. Non-intellective requisites, 4. Environmental supports, and 5. Chance.
Each of the 5 factors have both static and dynamic subfactors as seen on the model. Static subfactors are those that represent humans in a picture because they tend to be external, and on the other hand, dynamic subfactors are more below the surface because they are rooted in both situational context and individual behavior.
Throughout the rest of the chapter, Tannenbaum looks at each of the 5 factors on the STAR model in more depth. As we move through each of the 5 factors, try to consider yourself in each of them to determine which qualities of demonstrated giftedness, according to Tannenbaum, that you may possess.
The first factor is superior general ability, or G, which Tannenbaum defines as some kind of mysterious mental strength denoting abstract thinking ability and is shared by a variety of specific competencies.
Superior general ability has a lot to do with IQ. IQ assessments are still today something that remains very heavily debated among researchers. Listed here on this slide are 4 researchers, and then their interpretations of IQ scores. Although a lot of research has been done on IQ, there is not one research finding that is superior over the others. All still remains questionable.
In relation to IQ, however, there was a document released by 52 prominent experts in the study of IQ. The document makes 9 different claims to define intelligence and how it is assessed. The 9 different claims are: number 1, intelligence denotes the ability to reason. 2, intelligence is measurable by IQ tests. 3, different types of intelligence tests all measure the same general intelligence. 4, the range of IQ in a population can be represented in a bell or normal curve. 5, intelligence tests are not biased against blacks or other minorities. 6, IQ is probably the single most valid indicator of potential. 7, a high IQ is advantageous in all activities in everyday life. 8, differences in intelligence are often the most important. And 9, personality traits, special talents, physical capabilities, and similar factors affect success.
Tannenbaum recognizes that the truth about intelligence testing is still unknown, and probably is somewhere in between the extremes as stated by researchers. Overall, however, it can be agreed that IQ testing is morally wrong, and that it is impossible to predict the future from just one test score. As with any test given in the classroom, legitimacy and validity do not go hand in hand. Rather, they have an opposite effect on each other, which is what happens in the case of IQ tests.
At this point in Chapter 4, Tannenbaum begins to focus in on the title of the chapter, which is The Nature and Nurture of Giftedness. Using research, he compares nature and nurture with the overall idea that nature is a more prevalent influence on IQ differences than nurture.
The next factor on the STAR model is special aptitude, which is the same thing as special abilities.
Tannenbaum details the results of the SMPY, which is the study of mathematically precocious youth. In this study, the researchers looked at 1,996 7th and 8th graders and concluded that the mathematics portion of the SAT predicted mathematics achievement when tested again 10 years later. However, following this research and conclusion, Tannenbaum still wondered whether or not a high aptitude in one single domain could reinforce a high aptitude in another domain.
Tannenbaum also referenced the research of Ruth Bernstein to reinforce his point, who used biographical evidence to conclude that the less advanced of the 2 aptitudes in a person informs the other.
The next factor on the STAR model is non-intellective factors.
Tannenbaum began this section by detailing the research of Richards from 1981. He wanted to discover how personality traits were related to giftedness, and in order to discover this, he researched connections between 3 different components: creativity, psychopathology, and third factors. He found a strong link between creativity and psychopathology, and associated the 2 between the relationships shown on the next slide.
Next, Tannenbaum looked at how other research supports Richard's findings. He concluded, following detailing the works of Holden from 1987, Ludwig from 1995, and Valiant from the year 2000, that all three researchers support Richard's findings in the fact that in some way there is a positive link between creativity and psychopathology.
To look further into non-intellective factors, Tannenbaum discusses how creativity is related to mental health through the big C and little c idea. Big C creativity can be viewed as a breakthrough kind of thinking or dramatic talent. Little c creativity can be viewed as smaller ideas. These can be good but not great ideas, or those aha moments that we all have.
Tannenbaum goes on to question whether extrinsic motivation strengthens intrinsic motivation through the research of Cameron and Pierce from 1994. They conducted 96 studies related to this ongoing debate and concluded in favor of the fact that extrinsic motivation strengthens intrinsic motivation.
Tannenbaum ends this section on non-intellective factors by looking at self-concept and how it's related to the achievement when focused on one single domain. He strengthened this concept by looking at the research of 5 different studies, all of which found a positive relationship between self-concept and giftedness.
The next factor on the STAR model is environmental supports.
Tannenbaum recognized that giftedness needs a social context to mature and that human potential needs nurturance. He supported this idea through the research of this man, who found that environment shapes creativity through 3 different forces. These are, number 1, the domain in which productivity or performance is acceptable, and which undergoes significant and forceful change from one period in history to another. Number 2, the field of teachers, critics, patrons, and creative peers who judge individual donations to each domain. And number 3, the person who creates within the limits of a domain and sometimes changes it to the satisfaction of the field. Through these 3 different factors, he concluded that giftedness interacts with each domain in a different way.
Together, school and community encourage gifted development. Tannenbaum notes that special curriculum for gifted students is an effective method. This curriculum includes fast-paced instruction, in-depth studies, and add-on coursework. The quote at the bottom of the slide which says, "Teach Sanskrit to students capable of learning it, and they will learn more Sanskrit than will comparably capable students who are not taught Sanskrit," sums up gifted curriculum in a way that explains what is expected of students that are engaged in this curriculum.
Tannenbaum also touched on various other environmental factors that affect giftedness. These factors include neighborhoods that students live in, peer groups that students are associated with, pressures on children from outside forces, student attitudes, cultural values, and emerging adolescence.
The final factor on the STAR model is chance.
When looking at chance factors, Tannenbaum considered the influence of the unexpected and unpredictable factors on human development. These chance factors have been largely ignored in relation to giftedness. He references the research of Austin from 1978, who found that there are 4 different levels of chance factors. These 4 levels include number 1, simply luck, number 2, mind and body in constant motion, number 3, unforeseen experience, and number 4, altamirage. Altamirage can be defined as a person becoming lucky because of one action or good fortune.
To conclude, Tannenbaum referenced many important researchers in the field of giftedness in order to support his definition and his STAR model. To sum up his chapter into one statement, he ends by saying that until giftedness can run its course, They are seen as potentially gifted, and only time can tell if it will be fulfilled. Thanks for watching!